welcome back to our stream part 2 of Clearing the Backlog World and Economica Episode 1. So, previously on our stream, so far the stories about Yoshiharu, or Haru in short, has given us a background on us origins that he ran away from home to live alone. The setting of the story was also to explain that the setting is on the lunar colony. A lot of details on the economy was also explained. Previously, Haru have escaped from the police because he ran away, and seems like this time the police is able to catch up to him. Will he be able to escape? Kinda screwed that up. Well, anyway, let's load our last save. Welcome. 2 please. Yes sir, table for 2. The woman said this in her usual carefree voice, but the words barely entered my ear. I lowered my cap even farther over my eyes and hunched over, trying to hide in the reflection of my busy display. Looking at their clothes, it was unmistakable. The pair who had just arrived at the table on the other side of the restaurant were police officers on patrol. I'll get the tension done. Same here. Very well, to tension. It seemed like they just chose this place randomly during their patrol. But who likes eating in the same restaurants as the cops? Not only that, I think those two were the ones who were at the Big Ball Cafe, according to my faint memory. Oh dear. Seems like MC might get caught this time. Let's see. Patrol route for the police didn't include going into cafes, so someone had to have tipped them off somehow. I was not some sort of invisible man, so someone surely must have seen me hanging around a weird place at a weird time. Whoever that someone was, if they told the police that there was a shady looking kid around, there'd only be a handful of places they'd search. It was totally possible that those two were looking for me. That might also be the reason that the policeman facing me was glancing at me now and then. But to think that he'd take off and lead us on this wild goose chase. The policeman with his back to me suddenly spoke up. The cop looking at me waited a moment before replying to his part. Well, it was just some big shots looking at maps all day who decided how wide our area of the jurisdiction was to be. And there wasn't any public survey system in that area either. But I think that if he were hiding somewhere, it wouldn't have been in that net joint. The storekeeper there was a pretty sketchy looking guy too. But maybe we should grab him and rough him up a little. Don't judge by appearances. He ended up having a pretty impressive history, didn't he? Yeah, I guess. Man, I should have studied harder at academy. I never thought I'd be assigned to the boonies like this. Wow. Location has nothing to do with it. You just need to carry out your duties. You're very right about that. So they really were looking for someone. But the owner, that Gerald guy, had an impressive history. I couldn't even begin to imagine. What do we do after this? If we go by the book, we'd start the usual thing with questioning people. His co-worker facing me took a sip of water and went quiet, as if in thought. I got the feeling that he was taking a good, hard look at me. In my mind, I was praying that they gave up on the questioning and just went back to their nest. If we call in for reinforcements, we're just going to get laughed at. Looks like we've got no choice. Anyway, our duty is to keep public order. Cracks in public safety began in the smallest of places. Even if is just one boy, we can't just let him get away. My heart felt like it might jump right out of my mouth. Pretty much, they were talking about Haru. Now there was no mistake. They were tipped off by someone and were looking out for me. Lunar cities were nuts about keeping public order. Even in the Red Valley, where suspicious guys wandered the streets, there was not even the faintest trace of any real danger. It was just a degenerate, pleasure-seeking town. Everyone knew how risky committing an act of physical violence was in a place this small. After all, if you were deported with residential management court, there'd be no question that you'd never be able to come back. The only people exempt from that form of punishment were people who were born on the moon. Even then, if you committed second-degree murder or worse, it was not so certain. Of course, I wouldn't be subject to the penal code just because I ran from home. The overall zeal for maintaining public order would mean that I'd be sent back home. After that, I'd probably be forced to report to a local facility every day until I became an adult. While that happened, I'd go further and further away from the fountain of the world and eventually be swallowed up by the masses. I fixed up my darting eyes on my hand and thought desperately, how should I escape? How should I escape from here? If I grabbed my PC and ran, the plug would get in the way. Do I unplug the adapter from my PC, then take off running with just the unit? My identity could be given away by the adapter, but it was still better than being captured. Or should I stay still right here and wait for them to leave? I'd like to do that if it is possible, but that officer staring at me seems like he was about to stand up and shout, "Hey you," at me at any moment. My cold sweat dripped onto my keyboard. Wait, that woman wouldn't have ratted me out, wouldn't she? As I thought of this possibility, I was tortured by a desperate rage, but suddenly a shadow appeared on the table. It was that woman. More water? She poured me a refill. I cursed her in my heart, wishing that she wouldn't draw their attention towards me at a time like this, and my bored face was totally flushed. The piece of paper with words written on it was attached to the side of the cup she plunked down on the table. Get ready. Oh. I guess she's gonna help him. Shit's gonna go down. I nearly raised my head, but the woman quickly left my table before I could make the mistake. I set my computer to mute and shut it down so that they don't notice that my OS was no longer running. I gave up on the adapter. I quietly pulled the cord out of the main unit and confirmed the location of my bag. I already used the money I always kept in my jacket pocket at the cafe, so I'll use what I had in my back pocket. There was a line in an old Earth Mafia movie that I saw at home that said that a $10 bill kept in your clothes was a business card to God. It certainly kept you well prepared. I quietly placed a 10 bill by my hand. I perked up my ears and waited for the right time. The policeman had been staring at me non-stop. He was definitely suspicious of me. With a clang, the policeman started to get up. Tension up. At that very moment, the tension then was placed on the counter loudly. What's wrong? A cop called to his partner, who was now halfway out of his seat. Is it the guy behind me? Right after he said this, the woman's voice rang energetically throughout the room. Thanks for waiting. Here's your tension done. Oh, yeah. The one with his back to me turned his attention back to the food. The other one was looking at me, but because the woman was standing next to his corner seat, He was stuck in his seat and couldn't get out. Now was the wo- Now was the moment. The woman looked at me. It was my only chance. I pulled my hat over my face, closed my PC with my back, still down, grabbed it, and then shook it into my bag. The payments on the table. I said this as quietly as possible and left the 10 more bill on the table. Hey you, wait! The officer clearly told me to stop, but I gave him a sideways glance as I walked quickly towards the exit. It was only a distance of 3 steps, but it felt like forever. The yelling officer attempted to chase after me, but with the woman in his way, he couldn't get out. Yeah! The shrill scream came from the woman who lost her balance after being pushed by the officer. She turned to the other officer still sitting in his chair, and the piping hot tension looked like it was about to spill. Acting out of natural self-defense, the officer caught the ball in his hands. By that time, I had successfully exited the store. I took off running as if nothing else in the world mattered. Got away. Nice. Most of the lady yelled Haru. Nice. Spoke to myself out loud to make sure I wasn't in a dream. My throat was dry, though, so it was hard to speak, like right now. I cleared my throat a few times and took a deep breath. I hadn't I hadn't the foggiest how I got here after I left that store. I ran for my life towards the narrowest street I could find. I thought the police would be right behind me if I looked back, so I did nothing but run forward, not looking back at a single time. After that, I must have found a handy-looking tunnel to hide in and then fallen asleep inside it. The pain throughout my body must have been sleeping in the same position the entire time. Is this a sewer? In general, any place made of the moon's unique limestone was a public facility. This place also had a cool, rough limestone floor as well as matching walls. Between that and the sound of running water, this place had to be a sewer. Right then, I noticed the slight glow around me. Slept from the exit. It seemed like I was nearly passed out, and while I had no idea how long I had been asleep, it must be night now. The fact that the lamps were lit made me certain of it. Slowly and carefully, I began to walk. Suddenly, the road turned into a dead end. I could see the light source on the other side of the wall that I now faced, which was even taller than me. I let out a quick gasp because it looked as though something on the ceiling had moved. But the only things there were strangely wavering lights and shadows. Like a small bug attracted to the light, I took my bag off and climbed the wall. Then when I saw what was on the other side of the wall, I let out a much bigger gasp. Holy. For me was a huge spacious atrium. I was near the top part of the atrium and I could see more passages on its opposite and right sides. However, the most amazing part was the waterway passing through the base of the atrium. Clear water flowed through it like gentle rapids, and most of the sound of water must have originated there. The bottom of the reservoir glowed a bluish color. I'll drink water for a bit. As I gazed at that scene, amazed that places like this existed on the moon, I suddenly heard a rustling sound behind me. Ah. As I turned back in surprise, I forgot that I was balancing on top of a wall. Immediately lost my balance and fell onto my back. Wow. I thought it fell on the water. GG laptop if ever. All of a sudden, I saw a pitch black figure in front of me, rifling through my bag. Hey, whoa, what you're doing? Not only had my life's wages and labor gone into that PC, but it also carried me 1 billion mule dream that I knew I was going to make a reality. My body moved before I even had time to think, and I tackled the figure. I threw myself at the shadow, covering its face with my left hand and aiming for its throat with my right. It was a technique that an immigrant from Earth taught me when I was growing up in a village full of muscleheads. It was an incredible effective technique, and it had to be was used by someone who came from a place where a failed government was replaced by military forces would seize the UN food supplies to be used as aid and would toss it around as if they were feeding animals. Because I was looking at the light coming from the waterway, I still weren't used to the darkness. The passage was narrow though, so I couldn't miss. Not only that, my opponent was way weaker than I had thought, tumbling over as soon as I connected. Right at that moment, I saw a small blank-like object fall into the floor. The glowing object looked like it could be some sort of computer terminal. However, I was too busy thinking about punishing this idiot who was searching through my bag. On top of that bastard's body was either not resisting or too surprised to. I kept my grip on their throat and pulled my other hand in the tightest fist I could make. Die! I froze my fist over. Oh, it's the lady on the sign of the game. I raised my fist and was about to drop my iron hammer of fury. I began to speak. A woman? Fuck. And then my vision went dark. I only realized that I had been punched in the nose after I was woken up by being shoved into the chest on the side wall of the passage. Hitting me out of nowhere. What's wrong with you? The pitch black shadow, or rather the pitch black woman, began to speak. Is my... Okay. Just the right set sound volume. Black hair, black. That is not black eyes. That's red eyes. Black clothes, black skirt. That is also not black clothes. That's brown. But anyway, that's how it was translated, and likely it just the translators went for with the translation, not actually bothering with the art. I am not so sure about this one. I cannot tell what happened during the translation of this game, but it's likely that they followed the text on the screen, and it's likely the main character is describing it that way since it's dark in the tunnel, so likely her ankles peeking out from the hem of her skirt were black too. Okay, even her stockings were black. Interesting. Dressed in black from top to bottom, her white face seemed to float in the darkness. She stared at me with her thin black eyes as if she was staring at a bug. My head was sitting both from shock of being punched and my anger at the outrageous situation. What the hell? You're the one who was going through my bag. What's wrong with you? That's not true. What would you do if this broke? The girl looked around, then while still sitting, she reached out her arms and grabbed the plank-like device that fell earlier. She brushed away the dirt and began to use it, probably to see if it still worked. But anyway, what kind of mentality would lead someone to verbally attack me after hitting me? This is why I hated women. Whoa, calm down, dude. I'm just doing this because I was asked to. Why do I have to be subjected to this? She seemed to mutter this to herself. Disheveled from the fall, she gathered her long black hair into a bundle of darkness in one hand and straightened it neatly in an instant. It looked like a cable harness. Found him. Hurry up and get here. I'm in the side passage on the top level. Still seated, the girl began to talk. That thing might also work as a communication device. Okay, we're found. Hey, screw now, Haru. Who in the world is she? Was she searching for me? Or was she interested in what I was carrying? But that were the case, I wouldn't hold back. Thankfully, I was in a dark, deserted, and hard-to-see place. I might have lost the fight just now. But if I went at her with all my strength, I knew I could win. Maybe I should take some naked pictures of her and post them online once I was done. Okay, calm down, very good. But I guess that's how you win a fight. With that in mind, her arrogant attitude and expression would come in handy. Right as I went to move my back off the wall, I heard a voice. I hear you. Wait 1 minute. The floors get complicated around here. As soon as I heard the voice, I felt the dark urge in my chest disappear. Are we still screaming? Yep, we're still screaming. As I had heard that voice before. It was the voice of the woman from the Chinese restaurant who allowed me to escape. Oh, they have connections. Nice. Interesting. Hurry up, Lisa. The girl spoke curtly into the terminal. I feel like I'm losing brain cells just being around this guy. I was dumbfounded for a moment and then glared at the girl. Ha! The girl glanced at me, then quickly turned away. She acted as if she had heard a stray dog barking outside her window. She was clearly acting in the intolerable way that only women can, making it seem as though no insult or abuse hurled her way could possibly affect her. While I was the type to get really angry when something I say is ignored, I was not even enough an adult to express my irritation. I glared at her, not caring how lame I might be looking. Still glaring at her, I pulled my bag towards me and made sure that nothing had been taken up. Nothing seemed wrong. Only there seemed to be something like a piece of dried macaroni at the bottom of my bag. It was partially metallic and a small green rice-sized light was flickering on and off. Around the time I figured that it was a homing device much like one you'd use on a pet dog, I heard footsteps from the other side of the passage. The woman who appeared shortly after was unmistakably the one from the Chinese restaurant. While she was irritating, she also saved me. Definitely. Now there's two girls saving Haru's butt. What a protagonist. So this was Lisa? Finally found you. I told you reception is bad around here. The girl in black replied. But I found you. It took a little while though. The woman wiped her forehead, which made her finally realize that her hair was in a mess. I'm amazed that you got all the way to a place like this. Were you here the whole time? While the woman talked, she took the flat device from the sitting girl. After inputting a few commands, the macaroni-shaped light in my hand stopped blinking and turned yellow. Is this a tracking device? Not answering the woman's question, I asked one back. Yep, I put it there when you were bending over to plug your adapter in. You were busy being charmed by my legs, so it was easy to do. Woo! I wasn't charmed by anything. I shot back. This only caused the seated black girl to shoot me a disdainful look over her shoulder. Well, I apologize for putting a homing device in your bag without asking. No matter what the reason, it isn't a nice thing to have happened to you. Her easily offered apology left me no room to complain. Only there was no way that someone who put a tracking device in someone else's bag could be an upstanding person. Definitely. Now, Haru, you might want to run. but not really at the same time because they help you. Uh, you'd, you'd want to find out what's happening if this is the case. Considering this, I started to feel like her saving me at the restaurant might have been due to some ulterior motive. Definitely. They're going to sell you. Yeah, just kidding. In any case, I was in the back corner of a deserted sewer. What I, heard, what I had just thought of doing in my rage to the annoying girl in black might now be done to me. You see, geniuses and the girl were gathered in the lunar cities, and most of them could be called extremely talented. However, they often said that the line between brilliance and madness was paper thin. There was no shortage of stories along the lines of mad scientists performing unspeakable experiments on a nightly basis, or of wealthy perverts committing sickening acts one after another. Is the music too loud? I looked up the woman, shaking reflection from the water dimly reflected upon her face, and grabbed my bag with one hand. I was careful enough to spread my money across different pockets, so of course I carried at least a small weapon. But regardless of gender, the woman over there was taller than me. Gravity was weak on the moon, so if you thought about it as simple action-reaction, there wasn't much difference here between a man and a woman's punches and kicks. In that case, it came down to either wrestling or stiffening your body in one place and slamming it into your opponent while conserving as much physical energy as possible. That was where the length of your limbs made a difference. Still the length of the limbs, I guess. Not only that, there was someone right next to me who most certainly wasn't on my side. I recalled the atrium I had just looked into. With my leg strength, couldn't I jump over the wall all over to the other side? Or if I made sure to land in the water, wouldn't I be okay? Yep, definitely. Haru's planning to run just as expected. When someone puts tracking a device on your bag. While my mind was whirring through the possibilities, I gulped and said the following. Why are you doing this? Was you saving me a trap? I wasn't sure I should say that much, but before I could make a decision, the woman spoke first. Let me drink some water again. The woman smiled as if she was stumped and bent her head to the side. She then continued. For fun? My back stiffened with a shudder. I had the feeling that I was going to be killed. You got to be kidding me. I still had dreams and I just barely got into the starting line. I stood up and suddenly pulled all my strength into my thigh muscles. It's pretty natural for main character to behave like this. I already like him. He uses his brain. Whether if it be good fun or bad fun, who knows? You definitely need to run. He spoke right as my body began to fly up. But I mean, you wouldn't want to get falsely arrested, right? Unable to drain all the strength in my thighs, my body floated as I hopped lightly backwards. With a slow, gentle trajectory, my back tapped against the wall. Wait, wrongly arrested? That's right, those two officers were chasing after a boy, age 15 to 17, height around 116 centimeters, slender, black hair, black eyes, Asian features, wearing a black backpack. But isn't that him? Ill. Obviously, this girl knows what to say. She kinda looks like Jack Lee from Artonelico 2, was it? Yeah, she's definitely looks like that. Jack Lee was one beautiful lady. Anyway, the girl in black replied to this description. That's what I thought too. But after talking to them some more, I realized that it was someone else. I was slightly confused. When did I get asked that? That woman had known for a long time that I was a runaway. I'd been going in and out of that restaurant for a while and had met her a number of times. Running away from home was a minor as a minor was technically against the law. While it was not something you'd be punished for, it was assumed that public order would be deteriorated by jobless, penniless minors wandering the streets, so they were cracked down on. That's why the woman's word didn't make sense to me. Confused and with my black. With my back still against the wall, I heard the woman let out a small sigh and continued to talk. Those two officers weren't looking for just some runaway kid. They were after a thief. Thief? That's right. But well, considering his MO and the circumstances, I could see somehow like you could be suspect. Hearing this, I was reminded of how persistent the woman was when it came to the most random things. What's the MO anyway? I was not explained. And that's why you wouldn't stop asking me whether or not I had lunch. Exactly. The other day, someone stiffed a nearby restaurant on the bill. According to eyewitnesses, the suspect looked just like you as usual. But well, I didn't think that someone who would order IU jelly with a carefree, satisfied expression on his face right after gobbling up a crab fried rice would do something like that, you know. The woman giggled as she said this. Slightly miffed, I glared back at her. I wouldn't do something dirty like that over something like 10 moons. Of course not. I checked with Sarah Colt too. Oh, and I made sure to hold onto your change and your adapter. That made me feel a little relieved. Definitely important because pretty much is adapter important. Don't need to read this line because the adapter, we know how important adapters are. I heard that on Earth, even a child could anonymously buy parts that could easily be made into a cutting edge missile. Now that was a scary place, actually. So well, that's what's going on. You should come back to my place. I honestly could not understand what she was saying. What? Are you thinking of going back to that cafe? I asked Cheryl, and he said that four stern-looking guys are taking turns patrolling the place. It was not a result that was hard to predict. Only if that's the case, then I'd be back to sleeping on the hard ground of some deserted area. To be honest, doing that took a big toll on my body. Not being able to get a calm night's sleep was the worst part about this police patrol. As far as getting sleep, the Big Bull Cafe had a roof and running water, and if you said that you wanted to pay the premium fee, you get the sense of security that came with knowing what you'd be alerted if something dangerous started to go down. The question was whether or not that's a reason to just jump on the invitation from someone suspicious woman. Put tracking devices in people's bag for fun. Definitely. Definitely you'd get suspicious. Even in stock trading, a too good to be true balance sheet was something used to prime the pump right before a huge crash. Interesting. I understand why you might be suspicious, but I just told you, right? It's just a hobby for me. The woman told this as I remained downfall. Bringing runaways like me into your home was your hobby. She's either a pervert with some bizarre hobbies, or could it be my charm? I think I basically know what you're thinking, but the woman then laughed in amazement. Unfortunately for you, boys younger than me aren't my thing unless they're holding giant God-soaked scissors. What? Oh, well then what are you after? Is it my money? As soon as I said these words, the smile disappeared from the woman's eyes. Did she get mad just from that? I had the feeling that I had already said a lot of other things that she should have made her angry. I was still surprised at the sudden change. Watching my face, the woman must have realized the change in her own expression. Oh well, I'm sorry. She spoke in a forced tone, then rubbed the area around her eyes gently with both hands. This completely disarmed and confused me. Not only that, I was faced with the grim reality of not having any place to go. The woman in front of me allowed me to escape from the restaurant, so in that sense, I owed her a lot. And then concluded that aside from the part about being a runaway, I did consider myself a decent human being. So I should probably reply with something like this. If I do end up burden, if I do end up being a burden on you, I won't be able to pay much, you know. While I had realized that she wasn't especially interested in my money, I still had enough decency to feel bad about not paying someone who took care of me. That's why I said what I said, but would she understand? As I kept staring at the woman, she finally grinned and nodded. Of course, I'll take a little for food and other costs, but it should still be a lot better than wandering outside. Oh, and the woman continued. After all, I took care of Cyril too. Oh, okay. Cyril is also a runaway, I guess. Drinking water again. Huh? Nothing you should worry about. So what will you do? There's nothing else I could do. There was only one way I could answer. Thanks. You should be more honest and just say that from the beginning. The woman continued to smile as she said that, but I told her in my head to be more reasonable. Okay, then let's go back. If it gets much later, I won't have a good excuse to give to the police. Hearing the word police, I nodded once again, recognizing the precarious situation I was in. However, while both the woman and I tried to settle, there was someone who wouldn't budge an inch. It was the girl dressed in black. Well, I wasn't sure if she was listening to my conversation with the woman or not. She had an absent-minded look on her face. What are you doing? The woman asked. It was a very pertinent question. The girl, still not answering, turned her head and stared my way. Her utterly conceited expression immediately reminded me of the irritating argument I just had with her. What? I said this to her with a voice full of anger. I knew that my remark would be ignored or snubbed, but she was being so upsetting that it just came out that way. As I expected, the girl then turned away snootily, with all the annoying elegance of some sort of princess. Hagana, you're not trying to throw a tantrum like some child, are you? Wait, so who is Zero? Wait, was Zero the guy, the owner? I'm bad at names. The woman used the name Hagana to refer to the girl. Still snootily turned away, the girl. Hagana gave no reply. Snootily. Snootily is a word. I'm not sure if I have heard. I do understand what it means, but okay, it's interesting. Interesting choice of word. But with this, I was roughly able to guess what was going on. The woman inviting me to her house most likely meant that I would be living under the same roof as this obnoxious girl named Hagana. Naturally, I was upset that I'd been openly rejected by her. But taking a step back, I suppose I could understand how Hagana felt. This put me at a bit of a loss. Should I get angry, or should I respond like an adult? Only this wasn't the time or place to dawdle. As I was about to say that I didn't mind even sleeping in the garden, she spoke first. I can't stand up. Okay, what? Hagana looked up at the woman who replied to her and continued, I can't put any strength into my hips. It's because he tackled him. Okay, was it? Did he tackle him that strong? It was effective though. Hagana looked at me as she said this. The woman looked at me. He tackled her? Really? I vaguely recalled something like this happening in kindergarten or elementary school. Teacher so-and-so tackled someone or another, but I was not want to use violence without a reason. If the girl in black looked over and responded to us and saw something searching through her own bag, couldn't she have done the same thing? Right as I went to say this, I'm faced with the fact that I tackled a delicate girl and began to realize that I had done something that was so hard to make an excuse for. Ah, women are such unfair creatures. These lines would make me, uh, like, would make my YouTube channel demonetized. Anyway, I cursed the black clad and white skinned Hagana as a sheer retractation. I guess so. Wait, no, but well, I can imagine the situation. In that case, in a fight, both parties are to blame. The woman said this, then pointed at Hagana. Hagana looked at the tip of the finger as if it were covered in some kind of sweet syrup. If you can't walk, then have him carry on you his back. The woman pointed her finger towards me. Still attracted by the finger, Hagana's gaze shifted to me. Wait, how is that punishment for both of us? That doesn't make sense. While I protested, the woman raised her eyebrows ever so slightly, as if to insist that I listen to her. This was blatant favoritism, I thought. After the person that she's saying was to be carried must also, I began to think, then realize, in a fight, both parties were to blame. Okay, hurry up if you don't understand. This wasn't just any ordinary woman. Hagan also made a face as though she had some sort of realization, then nodded. I sighed and put my bag on my front side and walked up towards Hagana. She was sitting down on her face. She was sitting down, so her face was in a somewhat erotic position. Hagana didn't make particularly expressive faces to begin with, and stared up to me motionlessly. Let's not read these lines. I wasn't sure how long it'd take, but living under the same roof as her seemed like it'd be a pain, at least until the friction between us settled in. I should avoid any potential points of conflict. Come on, Hagana, turn your arms, that's right. I tried to give Hagana, who seemed to be telling the truth about not being able to stand up, a hand in climbing on my back. Hagana's thin arms ran around my neck and then stiffened awkwardly. Actually, it seemed like this girl had never climbed on someone's back. Hagana, you're not going to be dangling from his neck. You're getting on his back. The woman explained, and after a bit of silence, Hagana shifted her body onto my back. Finally, two small but soft objects touched my back. As I was responsible for carrying her, I wrapped my hands around the bottom of Hagana's thighs. I was filled with a strange thought, so this what... This is a visual novel, definitely. Oh my god. Yep. Yeah. Not bad. Okay, stand. Another part of me nearly rose as well, but with a quick start, I put my strength into my two legs. I hadn't been skipping my resistance training, so I couldn't pretty easily carry out around 5 times my waist. One slender girl was practically nothing at me, especially with the moon's weight, gravity, I mean. Oh, you're stronger than I thought. The praise didn't feel too bad. Alright, then let's go. The woman began to walk. I tried to follow behind her, but Hagana stopped me. Wait. The woman turned back, and we both looked at Hagana's face. Hers was right next to mine. Suddenly, I smelled something sweet and fruit-like for a moment. What is it? As the woman replied, Hagana raised her head a little while still on my back and replied quietly, "He really stinks." Well, I'm a runaway, so definitely I'd stink. The woman looked blankly at Hagana, then at me. The strange, cheerful smile began to appear on her face. In a fight, both parties are to blame. So that's what he meant. She meant, I mean. I'm going to make her bow down to me one day. At that moment, I added another item to my list of ambitions. Interesting exchange of sentences. What time is it? It seemed as though the place I tumbled into after running like mad wasn't a sewer. It was more precisely a reservoir. As Newton City was the center, gathered everything, including people, water, and wealth. If there were happened to be problem with the city's water circulation facilities, there was fear that the low-lying Newton City could flood. For that reason, there were apparently two additional layers of facilities for a long-term water shortage, so that water went from the outer sections to Green City, then from Green City to Newton City. Well, I didn't know the first thing about this. I didn't know that I was in a place with an incredible, fantastic atmosphere. And that was why other towns generally forbid entry into these reservoirs. It's because couples that get together tend to be drawn toward places like that. Oh, okay. Also, this area seemed to be quite a low-income neighborhood even with the standards of the 6th outer section, and it was full of homes on the verge of collapsing. Even here on the gravity, no, okay. Very realistic. Even so, the many lights in the town made it easy to recognize that lots of people live there. For a town in the outer sections, this one was relatively old. Apparently, it used to be more lively in the past. As it was also night, there was almost nothing there related to liveliness. Actually, it looked like a scene out of some children's tale from long, long ago. The place wasn't a reality, but rather ruins from the real world overlapping with the glory of past days. That's how the place looked to me. Every once in a while, someone would go out the eaves of their home under the imitation stars projected on the dome and amuse themselves by drinking alcohol or by playing a game of chess or go. It may have been a poor area, but it seemed incredibly safe. I don't understand why they had to make fake stars. You know? Oh, because of the lack of atoms. Oh, there's the Earth. This is very nice looking, actually. They say that it was an old town, which must have meant that its residents had stopped developing the area. Newton City had developed at a rate that threatened to surpass even the most advanced nations on Earth, so some of the people that have been attracted to it work so hard that you could refresh the list of humanity's richest people and see changes every day. To put it another way, the people who decided compete became comparatively poorer by the day. Getting poorer under capitalism meant that you're being forced that much further back in the big race. Not only that, I didn't want to become of the masses. But if I failed, then I'd end up like those people. Agan had finally stopped calling me smelly. I rearranged her position on my back, then asked myself a question sternly. Are we still not there yet? No matter how light they may be, people aren't the easiest thing to carry on one's back. Especially when it's a girl you're carrying, you have to watch where you put your hands. Hearing my question, Lisa looked over her shoulder and nodded lightly. So I sighed, thinking that we'll still had more to go. Lisa's feet suddenly stopped. Average watch time, 23 minutes. Wow, nice. Or was it 22 minutes? We're here. Hearing those words, I stopped my feet and raised my hands. I wonder what kind of rundown hut we arrived at, but to my surprise, I was facing an impressive gate. Actually, wasn't this a bit too impressive of a gate? 2 meters, 3 meters? Wait, more importantly, wasn't this as I stood so dumbfounded that I forget that Ghana was on the way back? Lisa put a hand on the gate and slowly pushed it open. It didn't even seem to be locked, but considering what this place was, I could understand. Standing in front of me was a building that I've only ever heard of before. Sheltering people is my hobby. Do you see why now? She opened the double doors and walked in. The next thing I knew, a bearded dude stuck on a cross was right in front of me. It's a church? Yeah, definitely. Welcome to the 6th Avenue Church. I mean, yeah, it's kinda expected of the story development. Not too crazy. Lisa that said this to me while I was still in shock. Why are you so shocked? You're what? You're a Christist. No, it's not a Christist. Christian. Oh my god, you Haru. You would get stoned for that. I thought that was something that they did only on Earth. It was something to be placed on the forefront of science and human advancement. Why was there a church here? Or could it be that people from Earth, this place far away in the sky, was supposed to be heaven? As I looked at Lisa as if she were some exotic animal, she gave a slightly embarrassed grin and shook her hand. I suppose you could say that, but worry, I'm not going to try to convert you or anything. Huh. After a long silence, all I could manage was a puff of laughter through my nose. According to fate, all I'm to do is to let lost sheep rest for a short time. It's the same thing for that girl on your back. I had already forgotten I was carrying a gun. They were here, so I'm going to let you down. Hurry up and let me down. I felt a flash of anger, but since I was holding onto both of her legs, I figured in the end I was very natural thing to say. There was what? Though I was overwhelmed by the temptation to just let her go, I bent my knees slowly and let her down, 1 foot at a time. Definitely that's how you let people down. Haru, you can stand? Agana was silent, but she seemed to be amazed that she was standing. What a strange woman. So what were you saying? Oh, so she's a runaway too. Right, same idea with Zero. This place is at a crossroads, and so according to the teachings, I have a bucket for washing feet and a cup of cold water ready to give. Really? Really now, okay? I mean, washing feet is not bad. Especially if you haven't taken a bath. Feet, water. I made the face as if to say, what is this woman even talking about? Lisa saw it, and instead of getting angry, she breathed a disappointing sigh. Do you happen to be born and bred on the moon? Yes, but so what? After I asked this back at her, Lisa shook her head, disappointed. Was she making fun of me? Was that what it was? As I glared at her, Lisa looked towards the statue of the dude stuck on the cross. Dude stuck on the cross. Placed her hands together and bowed with her head. Oh Lord, you have brought upon me a great trial. And she said this, she made a strange gesture with her right hand in front of her butt. As I wondered what she was doing, Lisa faced me and began to speak. For now, why don't you take a bath? I'm not trying to be Hagana, but you are a little dirty. Definitely. Being told this to my face was actually a bit embarrassing. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. that I said this, trying to hide my embarrassment. Hagana, who had been watching the situation quietly, picked up where Lisa left off. In fact, you smell terrible. Thanks for reminding me. After that, I began to be especially conscious of my own body. That day, I realized that I was at a far more emotional, innocent stage than I had thought. was the first proper bath I had since running away from home, and I was on the verge of tears. Both my parents were immigrants from Japan, so soaking in the tub was pretty much a daily tradition. Yes, so of course, Haru came from Japan because of his name, obviously. Why did I not think of this earlier? It would be the only luxury my parents enjoyed, if I had to think of any. You could find water circulating all over the lunar surface, but you definitely couldn't say water was inexpensive because of that. I heard that the reason they made water flow visibly everywhere was because water had a calming effect on the human soul. Even if that weren't true, I heard that all but a few places on Earth were short of water, and that half of international disputes stem from water resource issues. Perhaps the visible presence of water was to put some of the immigrants' anxieties to rest, since they believed that fights over water resources were an everyday occurrence due to their coming from various regions of Earth. Speaking of water, I'm drinking a bit. My throat hurts now, but yeah, just 3 minutes more. However, what I was currently soaking in was apparently water siphoned off before final processing, and thus it was quite cheap. At the bottom of the tub, I could see pieces of aquatic plants used for water purification, like I'd seen water mice. What? It wasn't just water that was limited on the moon. Unlike Earth, the moon didn't have vast quantities of various resources. Most of them were created from chemical processing of native lunar materials, or failing that imported by the orbital elevator. That's why people said the government organization in charge of managing the lunar surface had terribly precise control over the flow of various materials throughout the city. The most important of those was water, and thus the amount of oxygen and hydrogen. Any amount of oxygen could be obtained by using the plentiful amount of solar radiation to break down silicon dioxide, sand, and in other words hydrogen. However, only could be obtained by hydrocarbons that only exist at the poles. They really thought this out. It's interesting. Hydrogen is too light for the moon's gravity to retain it and thus naturally occur. That, okay. Carbon will be obtained by using limitless electrical power here to break down solid carbon ship in the form of orbital vapor. Oxygen could be obtained from this process, thus killing birds and monsters. The other various minerals needed for growth of plants and animals could be obtained through chemical process from orbital vapor. This basic knowledge is supposed to all kids in elementary schools. I had learned a lot while operating under that ocean, and thus it wasn't all the rose-tinted stuff they teach you at school. I remember sighing in awe at the system revolving around rights tied to important resources in lunar cities. The parts were of course controlled by the government, but the most powerful on the civilian side had to be Emerald Industries, which held the civilian rights to the orbital elevator. Emerald, I think Emerald Industries was mentioned before, holding much power on them. Anyway, we are ending our stream here. So far with that, Yoshiharu escaped the police. Then he ended up in a water treating facility, I guess. Then Lisa and I forgot the heroine's name. They found him because of a tracking device on his back, and now they will be leaving the church. It's better than not having a place to stay. Yeah, so far everything's interesting. Haru is using his head very well. And that's it. We're ending our stream here. For those who watch, thank you for watching. Thanks for watching. See you next time on part 3. Bye bye.